Hey guys, this is Will at Third and Long. Today we are going to be looking at the Week 2 Top 25 games and predicting out who's going to win, who's going to lose, and what the final score will be. Let's go ahead and get started because we have a lot of games. Coming in at 12 p.m. on the SEC Network, we have Ball State at number 1 Georgia. Now, this is obviously going to be a win for Georgia. Ball State did lose to Kentucky last week, 44-14. So basically all that we are doing is we are going to try to look at some good reps for Carson Beck and the running back Milton. So just trying to see how the team will do, get reps in. Things look kind of sluggish last week, but they will definitely get an easy win here. I'm predicting they're about 42-point favorites, but I'm predicting they'll win 51-10. The next game that we have coming up is at 12 p.m. on the Big Ten Network, and that's Youngstown State at number 5 Ohio State. So Ohio State did get knocked down 2 spots in the poll. Probably should have been knocked down further because they were probably the worst looking ranked team in the country next to TCU. But basically, this is going to be a win for the Buckeyes. So what we need to see is, just like Georgia, we need to see reps for the quarterback. Kyle McCord must show explosion. He looked sluggish last week, really slow throwing motion, feet looked slow, looked like he was running in mud the whole time. So we need to see him do better in game time reps. He has been on this team for 3 years, so he should definitely have a good understanding of this system. But we're probably also going to be some quarterback play from Brown, because even though it's not a quarterback controversy, it somewhat is, because the Buckeyes did not look good last week versus Indiana. And where is Marvin Harrison Jr.? We need to see more from him. He needs to be more than a blocker. So I think Ohio State is going to run up the score here because they're going to be throwing the whole game. Even when they bring in Brown second half, they will be throwing because they need to get both quarterbacks game time reps, because they could end up going with either one at any point. I think Ohio State wins 58-10. But I would not be surprised if it's like 65-10. Next matchup we have is Delaware at number 7 Penn State. So this is a back-to-back FCS game because the Ohio State was an FCS game, and this is a FCS game. So number 7 Penn State hosting Delaware. That's at 12 p.m. on the Peacock Network. So probably a lot of us won't be able to watch it, which is unfortunate. But Drew Aller, 5-star quarterback, looked great last week. I think he'll pick right where he left off last week. Now, they were kind of slow first half. I think they're going to pick up a lot quicker this week, and they're going to be getting better every single week. He has a great running back room, probably second next to a Michigan. So we're going to see good things from him. I think they're going to run it up. He will probably only play the first half. And definitely, Franklin does love to cover the spread, whatever that spread will be when it comes out Saturday morning. But I think Penn State will cruise to an easy victory, 65-6. Next game we have coming up is 12 p.m. on the ABC Network. That's number 10 Notre Dame at NC State. This is a really good game because both teams are pretty good, and Notre Dame has had one of the best starts to the year of any team in the country. Now, Sam Hartman is very familiar with NC State from his time at Wake. He's probably played them 3 to 4 times. So he's definitely familiar with that environment and how that team plays. But he's looked great this year, so I think they're going to pick up right where they've been the last 2 weeks. Now, for Brennan Armstrong, who's the quarterback transfer from Virginia to NC State, he ran for 100 yards last week. That is not going to happen this week. Notre Dame has a great defense. So NC State must figure out some other way. The whole offense cannot run through Brennan Armstrong. He can't throw for 300 and run for 300. That's just not sustainable at all. So he's going to have to figure out a way to get running backs in the game. Notre Dame's defense is going to be tough. I think it's going to be a good game because Brennan Armstrong is a pretty decent quarterback, and NC State is a very good team with a very good defense. But I think Notre Dame will pull away in the fourth quarter. I'm thinking 34-24 Notre Dame victory. Next game we have coming up is number 12, Utah traveling to Waco to play Baylor. This is another really good out-of-conference game. It's going to be 12 p.m. on ESPN. This game would have been good had Baylor actually been a decent team. But Baylor actually lost last week to Texas State. They lost 42-31, gave up like 450 yards. So actually really pathetic showing from Dave Aranda's team. His seat is going to be really hot. If he keeps playing like this, he will be getting fired this year, which is unfortunate to say, but it is what it is. Baylor expects better. Will Utah have Cam Rising? We don't know. If not, it will be kind of a mix-up between Barnes and Johnson. Utah's not a 212. I think they are overrated, but they're still a very good team, very disciplined team. They could ride their third string to a victory because they're going to play tough on both sides of the ball. Utah wins 27-17. Next game we have coming up at 12 p.m. on the Fox Sports Network. Troy at number 15, Kansas State. This is upset alert here. A lot of people picking the upset. Due to that, I think Kansas State will be very prepared because they've heard the noise. Kansas State is actually a decent team. Troy is actually a decent team too, and they can score a lot of points. Kansas State is the Big 12 defending champs. Quarterback Will Howard looked good last week. Running back Giddens looked good. He had 15 carries, 128 yards. I just basically think they're going to run it down Troy's throat and keep the ball out of their hands. I think Kansas State will ultimately win it in the fourth quarter, 38-24. Like I said, a lot of people picking the upset. Due to that, it should not catch Kansas State off guard because a lot of people are calling for it. Next game we have coming up at 12 p.m. on Fox. Nebraska Cornhuskers coming to Boulder, Colorado to pay the number 22 Colorado Buffaloes. Colorado is going to be popping at this point. They now have a ranked team, and Deion Sanders looked good that first game versus TCU. However, Matt Rule is not Sonny Dykes. Nebraska, who has completely retooled their team, also will not make the same mistakes as TCU. What do I mean by that? They're not going to throw the ball 50 times. Matt Rule is going to run it 60 times. Basically, they're just going to suck clock away from Colorado. Their defense will play a lot more disciplined, but Matt Rule is completely rebuilding this team at a slower pace than Sanders, so they're not as talented, they're not as fast. Matt Rule will get them there, but they're just not there as of right now. Quarterback Sims for Nebraska, he's going to run a lot. He had 3 turnovers last week in their loss versus Minnesota. They lost 13-10, so they're not getting it in the end zone. That's the problem. Sanders will not throw for 510, but I think they will do enough to win the game. I'm picking Colorado to win 30-27. However, this is one of those games that kind of has an upset alert just because of the way Nebraska plays. They will control the ball for the majority of the game just because they play so slow and they run a lot. Next game we have coming up. Charleston Southern coming to number 25 Clemson. This needs to be a revenge game. Charleston Southern has no chance here, and they are an FCS team. Clemson needs to show what they can do here, and they need to rebound from that horrible game they had at Duke when they lost 27-7. So I think Clemson is going to run it up. Garrett Riley is going to throw up some bombs because he definitely better draw that up because they averaged 5 yards per pass last week. So I expect bigger things from their offense this week. We need to see more from Cade Klubnik, Will Shipley, Garrett Riley, and Dabo. And they need to get Antonio Williams, the wideout, in the game. I think they are going to try to score as much as possible because they need to show what their offense can do. And their quarterback needs to get used to actually scoring some points, and this team better control their fumbles. But no matter what, even if they play horrible, they will still win. I'm picking them to win 60-7. Next game we have coming up, UNLV coming to number 2 Michigan. That's at 3:30 on CBS. So the Michigan Wolverines, Harbaugh is still out, but the offensive coordinator will be back from his 1-game suspension. Michigan still has the best running back combo in the country. Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. The Michigan Wolverines won last week, 30-3 versus ECU, and UNLV also won versus Bryant, 44-14. I think Michigan is going to win this game because they are going to establish and control the line of scrimmage, and their defense will be shutting UNLV down. I'm picking them to win 41-10. Next game we have coming up at 3:30 p.m. on ESPN2. The Ole Miss Rebels, number 20, travel to number 24 Tulane, so going to New Orleans. This is a really good ranked-on-ranked team with the home-and-home series, and they're both ranked, so that'll be really fun to watch. Now, Tulane last year won 12 games, beat USC in the bowl game. Willie Fritz's team is always good, always disciplined. Quarterback Michael Pratt looked great last week in their 37-17 win over Southern Alabama. He had 294 yards passing. However, Ole Miss last year was the 3rd highest rated rushing team in the nation as a team, but last week when they won 73-7 over Mercer. The team actually threw for 524 yards. So Lane Kiffin went the complete opposite direction. But that's what Lane Kiffin does. He is an offensive guru. To me, the Rebels just have way too much firepower. They have Jackson Dart. They have Spencer Sanders as the backup quarterback. They have the number 2 running back in the country, Quinshon Judkins. They have weapons everywhere. They have the wide receiver, Trey Harris. This team is loaded. But Tulane is not a pushover, but I think Ole Miss pulls the game out. They win 38-24. Next game we have coming up this weekend, 3:30 on ABC. Number 23, Texas A&M, traveling to Miami, playing the Hurricanes. This is a game to me that is 50-50. It can go either way. Jimbo Fisher did bring in Bobby Petrino as the offensive coordinator. Both teams finished last year 5-7, so disappointing games for both teams. Their game last year was like a 17-9 game, really low scoring. Miami did not get a touchdown. Miami has completely retooled their team. New defensive coordinator Lance Guidry, new offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson. So Mario Cristobal's coaching staff completely retooled. What's going to happen this game? Beginning this year, I picked the Hurricanes to win. Even though I'm doubting that now, I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to ride with it. So Connor Wegman for Texas looked great last week, 236 yards, 5 touchdowns, but Miami was running the ball well. If they can continue to run the ball, they may be able to control the line of scrimmage and the clock with the new clock rules. So I'm sticking with my original pick. I think Tyler Van Dyke will do enough as the more experienced quarterback to win the game, and Miami will win 30-27. But I could see this being a lower scoring game, and Texas also winning like a 24-21 thing. But I'm just going to go with Miami, because that's what I picked previously. And we haven't really seen enough from either team for me to change that, because it's only the second game of the season. Next game we have coming up, we have Tulsa traveling to number 8 Washington. That's at 5 p.m. on the Pac-12 network. Tulsa is not a pushover. Last week they had 517 yards in their win, so they definitely can move the ball. They definitely can score. But Washington had one of the better wins of last week. They beat a really good 2022 10-win Boise State. So a really good out-of-conference win for them, and they beat the crap out of Boise State. They still have Michael Penix Jr., 450 yards last week, 5 touchdowns. They had a total of 568 yards as a win versus Boise State. They just have way too much firepower. So I think Washington is going to cruise to a victory, 44-21. Next game after that, we have another FCS matchup. So Austin Peay traveling to play number 9 Tennessee. That's at 5 p.m. on ESPN Plus and the SEC Network Plus. So Austin Peay actually lost last week to SIU 49-23. So things aren't standing up very good for them when they lost to another bad team. Tennessee beat the crap out of the team they played last week. However, they left a lot to be desired. What do I mean by that? Their first drives were scoreless. They started out really slow. You can do that versus Virginia, but you can't do that versus better teams. So I am looking for them to get a faster start. Joe Milton, although he didn't look bad, he needs to look better this week. They need to start scoring faster. They need to be getting first downs to start the game and get in the end zone, not field goals. So I think they're going to be dialing up a lot of long plays, throwing some bombs. They just have way too much firepower. They were running the ball well last week. The running back Wright, 12 carries, 115 yards. They will pick up right where they left off second half last week. So I think they're going to score a lot more and a lot faster. They're going to win 66-10. Next game we have at 5:15 on the ACC network. We have Appalachian State coming to number 17, North Carolina. Now, if you remember, last year's game was completely crazy. It was a 63-61 Tar Heels win, and it was like 3-4 overtimes. I don't think this year's game is going to be anything like that. I think the Tar Heels will definitely be in a lot more control this year. But they need to rebound. What do I mean by that? Because they won last week for South Carolina. Drake May, to me, has to play better. He didn't have a bad game, but he went 24 of 32, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. He needs to play a more polished game, and a go-to receiver must establish themselves. To me, they are going to win this game, but this game is setting the foundation for the conference games coming up this year when they will be playing better defenses. So who will step up to be wide receiver number 1 to help out Drake May? Because the whole offense cannot run through him. That's just not sustainable. I think they will win 38-24. 24, and Drake May will have an excellent game. Next game we have coming up is a really good out-of-conference game. So we have SMU traveling to number 18, Oklahoma. Do not overlook SMU here. Rhett Lashley, good coach, good offensive play caller. So they will move the ball. They will score. Their running back, Johnson Jr., had 14 carries, 128 yards last week. Quarterback, P.J. Stone, throwing the ball all over the place. They look good. However, Oklahoma had one of the better wins last week. They won 73-0 at Arkansas State. They shut them out and put up over 70 points. That's about as much as you can ask for from any team. Dylan Gabriel is a legit quarterback. He will run. He will throw the ball. Brett Venables has a completely retooled defense, completely retooled defensive line, top 5 recruiting class, top 5 transfer portal class. This team just will have too much talent. Now, I think it might be close, first quarter, but Oklahoma will pull away because they definitely are the more talented team. They'll win 45-24. Next game we have coming up at 6 p.m. on ESPN+, another FCS matchup. We have Lafayette coming into play, number 21 Duke, fresh off of their win versus number 9 Clemson last week. So Duke is running high right now. Quarterback Riley Leonard had a great game this past week. He had 175 yards passing, 98 yards rushing. So he pretty much was the whole game. But just like some of these other quarterbacks, the whole offense cannot run through him. This is an FCS team, so the running game for Duke better step up to alleviate Riley Leonard. He better not be the main rusher versus Lafayette. Someone else has to come in to be running back one. Some wide receivers have to get over 46 yards. So someone else also has to step up. But great win last week for Mike Elko's team. Duke will cruise to a win here, but I want to see some more play from people not named Riley Leonard. Duke will win 48-17. Next, we have the game of the weekend at 7 p.m. on ESPN. We have number 11 Texas traveling to Tuscaloosa to play number 3 Alabama. A rematch of Saban Sarkisian. Last week, Texas, Quinn Ewers did not look good. He looked kind of behind the whole game. They have no running back one. Someone needs to step up. Texas must get a running game post Bijan Robinson. Someone has to fill that void. They have a loaded secondary. They have a loaded defensive line. Xavier Worthy will be open. He was open last year. I think he's going to be open this year. Now, when it comes to Alabama, Milroe went 13 of 18 last week, 194 yards, 3 touchdowns, ran for 48 yards, 2 touchdowns, was the leading rusher. One of the questions coming into this year was, who are Alabama's running backs? That's still the question because we don't know who the running backs are. The lead rusher was Milroe. Is that sustainable for Alabama? Maybe. He's a pretty big guy, but I think Texas is going to look to force him to throw. They're going to load the pocket. They're going to close those lanes up, and they're going to have great defensive end play, keeping him from being able to scramble outside of the box and try to force him to play. That's their game plan. Coming into this year, I picked Texas to win this game, not based off of last year, although they should have won last year, but that's a completely different story. But I'm calling for the upset here. I am 50-50. I can see Bama winning. It's just I wasn't impressed by either team last week. Bama's offense to me did not look good, but they will control their clock with their new running style of play. I think Texas should rebound. They looked like crap last week. They better not look like crap this week. I think Texas will pull it out. I'm not confident, but I'm going to say 30-27. Texas will win it. Next matchup we have at 7 p.m. on Fox, number 13, Oregon travels to Texas Tech to play the Red Raiders. So with this game, this is another really good out-of-conference game. A lot of good out-of-conference games starting the year this year. So Oregon is coming off of an 81-7 win versus Portland State. That went about as well as it could have possibly gone. Bo Nix, 23 of 27, 287 yards, 3 touchdowns. The running back, Irvin, looked great. 4 carries for 119 yards. It's like 30 yards per carry, basically. And he had 2 touchdowns. But do not overlook Texas Tech. Even though Texas Tech lost to Wyoming last year, Tyler Shaw was 31 of 47, 338 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Texas Tech won 9 games last year. They were a dark horse Big 12 team coming into this year. They're way better than they played last week at Wyoming. Do not overlook them. They are a good team, but I do think they will lose this game, but they will lose it close, 38-31. Next, at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN+, we have Grambling, FCS, playing at number 14 LSU. So LSU dropped 9 spots from their loss to Florida State last week. JD Daniels, 346 yards last week, ran for 64 yards. He was the whole offense, and that's exactly why they lost. Where's their running backs? Where's their wide receiver play? Somebody needs to step up. This is another situation where the whole offense cannot run through him, and the defense needs to step up. Where was their secondary second half of last week? Those reasons, that's why this is a revenge game. They're going to put it on Grambling. I feel bad for Grambling. Brian Kelly will run the score up on them. Deservedly so, because they need to work out some of their kinks and get some good practice time in. LSU wins 64-7. Next game at 7:30 on ABC, we have the number 19 Wisconsin Badgers traveling to play Washington State. Another really good out-of-conference game. Wisconsin looked really sluggish last week, did not look good to start the game. They did win the game versus Buffalo, but they left a lot to be desired there. Luke Fickell, great coach. Phil Longo, great offensive coordinator. Tanner Mordecai did not look good, comfortable last week, but he should be getting better in this air raid system every single week. The running back, they ran for 314 yards last year. So think of Ches Malusi, 13 carries and 157 yards. Braylon Allen, 17 carries and 141 yards. They're going to run the ball down Washington State's throat, and then whenever they're ready, they're going to unleash the air raid and start throwing. So, well-balanced team, but do not overlook Washington State. C. Ward, 37-49 last week for 451 yards. So they were moving the ball as well. They kind of have their own version of the air raid going on. But Wisconsin will win, but I think it will be close, 32-27. I could actually see an upset here, but I'm saying that Wisconsin will win due to their running game. And when it gets down to it, you have to be able to run the ball in the fourth quarter. Next game at 8:30 on the ACC network. Southern Mississippi traveling to Tallahassee to play number 4 Florida State. There's not really much to know here. Florida State looked great last week. They have Jordan Travis. He's one of the Heisman frontrunners this year. They have the running back Benson. They have the wide receiver Coleman. Playmakers at every position. Great and strong defense. Mike Norvell has done wonders there. They're going to win this game 45-17, and Southern Miss will be happy to get out of Tallahassee having scored 17 points. Next matchup at 9 p.m. on the Pac-12 network. We have FCS UC Davis traveling to play number 16 Oregon State. Great season so far for Oregon State. They're picking up right where they left last year when they won 10 games. DJU, the transfer from Clemson, looked great. 239 yards last week, 3 touchdowns. They're going to run it, and they're going to throw it all over at UC Davis. The Pac-12 is loaded. Oregon State is loaded. It's just a shame that the season that they're having their best season in a long time, the Pac-12 is so good. They won every single matchup last week. And they did beat San Jose State by a larger margin than USC beat San Jose State. So good things for the Beavers. I think they're going to win this game 60-17. So it will not be close. Next, we have the final game for the ranked teams at 10:30 p.m. on Fox. So very late, Stanford coming in to play number 6 USC. Stanford actually had a pretty decent win last week. They looked pretty good. They were throwing the ball. But Hawaii did throw all over Stanford's secondary. So what does that mean for Caleb Williams? He's going to throw, and he's going to get a lot of passing touchdowns. So when you think USC, just think Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, loaded running back room, loaded wide receiver room with the freshman Branch. They're going to continue to do what they do. I think Alex Grinch, his defense should be getting better every single week. He does have a completely retooled defensive line. I think USC will cruise to a victory, 44-24. Stanford will get a garbage score touchdown to make it look not as bad as it was previously. So that's my breakdown of the top 25 for week 2, what the final scores will be. Hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks.